1924, 3 Native American tribes held an emergency press conference to stop a sheriff from killing Bigfoot. What they revealed about these creatures terrified the public, and then the story vanished from history. My name is Dave Mitchell, but everyone in town just calls me Mountain Dave. This is the harrowing story of how a disillusioned, wannabe lawyer with a passion for historical injustice discovered the government's most explosive secret and became a mountain loner, driven into the wilderness because of the chilling, irrefutable truth he uncovered that day. The man who sold me the key to the National Archives basement didn't ask for money. He asked for a promise that I would make sure the century-old silence finally broke, allowing the truth to breathe. He was an archivist, trading unauthorized access for moral absolution, tormented by the weight of the historical deceit he guarded. The secret he revealed was a single, unauthorized file, a thick, deteriorating record marked only with the classification Obsidian and a specific 2-digit accession number reserved for highly sensitive, non-disclosure agreement-bound documents. I was a specialized historian, focusing on early 20th century government suppression and the systematic erosion of tribal sovereignty. I spent 3 grueling weeks navigating the labyrinthine, archaic, and dated interface of the National Archives' internal server, executing complex, multivariable searches to bypass the official catalog. It felt less like academic research and more like picking the lock on a secure, digital tomb. When the document finally appeared, shimmering on the screen, it was a single, 20-page transcript titled 1924 Tri-Nation Address, heavily watermarked with overlapping confidential stamps. The file's placement in the catalog was glaringly wrong. It was deliberately mislabeled and catalogued under the innocuous heading of National Forestry Initiatives. I downloaded the file instantly and without hesitation. There was a sickening, icy realization that any interruption, even a flicker of network static, would lead to the file's permanent, non-recoverable deletion by the automated security protocols. The download completed just as a frantic, automated digital notice flashed onto the screen. Unscheduled maintenance beginning immediately. Access revoked. I was outside the perimeter, holding the digital equivalent of a timed bomb. Opening the file revealed discouraging layers of censorship. The transcript was split into 5 logical sections, and each was overwhelmingly blocked out by thick redaction lines. Page 1 was a sea of impenetrable black ink, save for the single, stark detail of the date, December 12, 1924. But the final 2 pages, stapled haphazardly and with an obvious sense of rush, were the key. They contained archival notes and frantic, highly agitated handwritten memos from a junior press liaison who was clearly caught in the immediate aftermath of a crisis. The truth began to surface in the margins and scrawls. One chilling memo, dated the morning immediately following the supposed address, read, "Immediate top-level retraction ordered by Secretary Wylie. All national media outlets are strictly mandated to run the substitution story on the national forestry debate. All photographic evidence and audio-visual recordings confiscated. The official version must be that the chiefs delivered warnings only about territorial incursions and hunting rights." Another memo, scrawled in hurried, urgent pencil, offered the full, terrifying context. They didn't talk about land at all. They talked about the watchers. They talked about the things in the high, hidden valley. We cannot allow this specific, existential narrative to survive even one news cycle. The real subject of the conference was buried, but the frantic, fearful, and aggressive government response was now documented, preserved, like a terrifying fly in amber, right before the system snapped shut entirely, Reading the unredacted names of the speakers felt like handling a poisoned artifact that could only lead to ruin. Chief Red Crow, Elder Sky Bear, and War Chief Tahoma. These weren't mere witnesses to be questioned. They were, in their own right, sovereign leaders issuing a solemn demand. The Obsidian File was not a record of diplomacy or negotiation. It was a preemptive, urgent warning, delivered with a chilling, absolute certainty. It established the sacred, inviolable nature of an unnamed mountain wilderness. The tribal leaders referred to a domain protected by an ancient, non-negotiable pact maintained for centuries. When I finally accessed the full, unredacted text of Chief Red Crow's opening remarks, I understood the government's immediate, paralyzing panic. He spoke clearly of the Watchers, ancient, territorial beings who stood substantially taller and were vastly more powerful than any man. He described them not as mythological beasts of the forest, but as intelligent, sentient guardians who oversaw the hidden territories and maintained ecological order. This transcript treated myth not as folklore, but as verifiable, actionable intelligence. The most unnerving phrase belonged to Elder Sky Bear, who warned specifically of the Valley of the Sleepers, a geographically precise place where the creatures retreated for regeneration and rest. He stressed, with profound gravity, that to disturb this valley, especially with the machinery of industry, would irrevocably awaken an ancient, formidable force that no army could stand against. It was the absolute, unyielding gravity of their tone that was most cinematic and impactful. They were delivering a non-negotiable ultimatum from a civilization predating the formation of the United States itself. The internal correspondence provided the aggressive, cynical counterpoint to the tribal warning. 5 separate, high-priority, handwritten notes, all dated the pivotal day after the conference, revealed the immediate, orchestrated panic. One stated with clinical precision, "The entire transcript must be stricken from the record immediately. We will only print the pre-approved, safe statement on regional resource management." The severity and speed of the reaction amplified the weight of the tribal warning tenfold. The government wasn't just covering up a unique cryptozoological discovery. They were suppressing the undeniable fact that 3 sovereign nations had convened specifically to warn them about an intelligent, territorial, and potentially hostile species. The sheer administrative aggression required to completely erase this high-profile public event within 24 hours was astounding and deeply concerning. I was holding the tangible evidence of a deep, historical fear, a concrete, physical record that the long silence was not accidental, but ruthlessly manufactured. The next logical and necessary step was to find the last known physical trace of the event. The moment I typed the dreaded word Bigfoot into the 1924 regional news search parameter, the archive server did not just experience an error, it crashed completely and catastrophically. It was not a random coincidence. It was a digital signature, telling me, with mechanical clarity, that I had crossed a predefined security line. The screen went cold and black. I rebooted my machine in the darkness of my quiet office. The system hadn't just failed, it had recognized the immediate convergence of the unique Obsidian File with the specific, forbidden cryptid term and initiated an immediate, programmed shutdown. Someone, decades ago, had programmed a highly specific digital tripwire using the very word the chiefs never uttered. When the system finally sputtered back online, I focused my search on the smaller non-national wire services, searching for a regional reporter who might have managed to slip a pre-censorship dispatch past the initial government dragnet. And then I found it. A fragmented, corruptible telegram sent from a little-known Denver reporter named Arthur Finch. I spent 30 painstaking minutes recovering lost characters and fragmented phrases, nursing the old text back to legibility. The last 2 sentences broke through the static like a desperate scream. "They are not Myth. The warning is real. Stop." Finch had issued a frantic, personal declaration of belief, sacrificing his career for a moment of truth. My research showed that Arthur Finch, a once promising journalist, resigned abruptly and without explanation in early 1925 and was never heard from professionally again. His life and his truth had been deliberately swallowed by the silence he tried desperately to share with the world. As I sat there, the air thick with history, my office phone chimed, an incoming secure landline call. The number was completely blocked and untraceable. I let it ring 15 slow, unnerving times. Then, against my better judgment, I picked it up. There was a faint, clinical click, followed by 30 seconds of absolute, terrifying dead air. The connection was severed with a sharp, professional finality. The source of the cover-up was not a decaying historical file, but a modern, active intelligence network that knew precisely when I had accessed the forbidden knowledge. They had found me, and they were already moving. The comforting anonymity of the chase was instantly over, replaced by the chilling, claustrophobic awareness of being actively watched and tracked. It was December 12, 1924, and when Chief Red Crow rose to speak before the assembled press and officials, every lit cigar went out in the sudden, profound silence. The archival records, even in their censored state, described the atmosphere as one of profound, paralyzing shock. Chief Red Crow spoke eloquently of an ancient pact maintained by the deliberate, respectful avoidance of certain peaks and valley systems. He described the towering Rockies not as an exploitable resource, but as a heavily defended perimeter. The creatures were referenced only as the Watchers, never by any demeaning title. He spoke of them as powerful, fundamental forces of nature, responsible for maintaining the delicate, brutal balance of the land. He warned that the relentless, profit-driven intrusion of the West, the logging, the mining, the settlements, was dangerously close to breaching a critical defensive barrier. He warned that if humanity violated this sacred domain, the consequences would be swift, absolute, and terrible for the entire nation. The narrative paused, the chief's gaze locked with unsettling intensity onto a junior federal agent, a deliberate signal that another official understood the implication. It was the exact moment the bureaucrats realized this was more than a protest. It was a terrifying declaration of war. His final sentence contained the core, dangerous truth. You move toward the treasure in the mountain, but you do not see the thing that already guards it, waiting patiently for the trespass. The stunned silence that followed was merely the preparation for the second, even more terrifying testimony. Elder Sky Bear spoke not of maps, but of a territory line marked by ancient stone circles, a boundary between history and prehistory. He warned against trespassing, detailing the creature's sophisticated signs, like the impossibly strong woven branches called Woven Sentinels, and their primary defense, a deep, disorienting infrasonic pulse used to drive away intruders. Critically, he revealed the boundary ran directly through the area slated for major mining leases, warning that the penalty for willful violation was the obliteration of the human mind. War Chief Tahoma then laid a single 22-inch petrified footprint cast on the table, instantly silencing the room with irrefutable physical evidence. He declared that humankind's greed was the greatest danger, predicting the government would suppress the truth to seize valuable minerals and exploit the creature. This prediction was tragically confirmed when a federal agent quickly and roughly confiscated the cast right there in the open forum. Chief Tahoma pronounced the seizure as the final break in the ancient pact, guaranteeing the creatures would now retaliate. This aggressive act of physical confiscation marked the verifiable start of the official cover-up. I used the geographical clues from the Obsidian File, mentioning shadow of the tallest peaks and unusual concentrations of magnetic, ferrous minerals to pinpoint the Black Pyramid in the high Cascades. This symmetrical dark apex was the unmapped heart of the territory line and was confirmed by suppressed surveys to be rich in high-grade copper and gold. The cover-up was an economic operation to seize this incalculable mineral wealth. I prepared for my journey into this territorial defense zone, packing specialized infrasonic equipment and high-altitude gear. I left my office, ditching all electronics and relying on paper maps to drive north. 6 hours into the ascent, the first sign of the creatures was not visual, but a distinct, overpowering, musky ozone odor, proving I had crossed the invisible boundary. I immediately deployed my infrasonic recorder, whose microphone glowed red, registering a low, rhythmic thrumming, a constant vibration, just below human hearing. I continued my slow, methodical climb, scanning the dense foliage for the distinctive Woven Sentinels. I found the first one tucked deep in a ravine, almost invisible in the gloom. A construction of impossibly snapped fir branches, standing 8 feet high, woven with calculated, terrifying intelligence that defied natural explanation. Near the base, I found small, scattered clusters of pyrite and quartz, arranged in precise, non-random geometric patterns, a conscious signal marking its territory with clear intent. The most unnerving find was a cluster of dried animal bones, carefully and cleanly stripped of flesh and placed in an organized, intentional stack, a curated professional display, a silent warning to any trespasser. The presence of the creature was now overwhelming, signaling that I was moving toward the heart of the valley and its watchful guardian. Then came the sound, a quiet, high-pitched, perfect whistle, precisely replicating the melody of my grandmother's favorite lullaby. It was an intelligent, terrifying lure designed to draw a human out. The shock was total because of the sound's uncanny, exact precision. It was an undeniable vocal replication, confirming the creature's advanced cognitive intelligence and mimicry skills. I instantly dropped to one knee, freezing under the canopy. I was being tested, my vulnerability gauged. I retrieved my thermal imaging scope. It showed nothing. The creature was either deliberately invisible to thermal detection, or its body temperature was ambient, a terrifying, unknown variable. The whistling started again, closer now, distinctly mocking my stillness. The infrasonic recorder flashed continuous angry red. The low thrumming was now a constant physical pressure. The whistle stopped with abrupt finality. The silence was immediately violated by a sequence of low, percussive knocks. Wood striking wood, delivered in a sharp, distinct 4-beat rhythm. It was a final, non-negotiable warning to retreat immediately. I realized that to linger was to actively invite a confrontation I could not conceivably survive serious harm from. My retreat was a forced acknowledgement of the creature's power and the boundary I had violated. The rhythmic knocking followed my movement for a few hundred feet before ceasing completely. I had confirmation that I was dealing with a calculating, intelligent mind, not a mindless beast. The morning after the conference, every single major newspaper, from New York to California, ran the exact same benign substitution headline about a national forestry debate and timber rights. the three powerful tribal leaders effectively vanished from official history overnight. The speed and scale of the suppression were terrifyingly effective. I shifted my focus back to the archives, looking for the logistical blueprints of the cover-up. The day after the address, the political operation began in earnest. A silence order, orchestrated from the Secretary of the Interior's private office, was disseminated by teleprinter. The instructions to newspaper owners were brutally simple. Replace all pre-existing accounts immediately with a fabricated, officially approved press release. One chilling archived memo specified the financial leverage used. Remind owners that federal rail contracts and paper subsidies are strictly contingent on immediate, full cooperation and compliance. The government used overwhelming economic coercion to silence the free press. Furthermore, every known photograph, reporter's note, and sound recording was systematically confiscated and destroyed. Federal agents were thorough, meticulous, and ruthlessly effective in erasing the physical evidence. The lie had been constructed and disseminated so swiftly and completely that the press conference about the Watchers had, for the official record, ceased to have ever existed. They had stripped the tribes of their honor, and then they stripped them of their proof. The government's agents were burying the dangerous fact that they knew the creatures were undeniably real and intelligent. The Obsidian File detailed the second, more aggressive wave of suppression, the physical confiscation of evidence from the reservations themselves. Military personnel, dressed as federal agents, were dispatched immediately to the tribal lands. The goal was prophylactic, to eliminate any lasting physical trace or testimonial record of the creatures. The agents arrived with thinly veiled threats and overwhelming force. The government conditioned the preservation of existing treaty rights and federal funding on the immediate, full surrender of all cryptozoological materials, samples, and accounts. It was pure, brutal political extortion. War Chief Tahoma's community was forced to surrender all their massive casts, hair samples, and detailed pictographic maps of the creature's pathways. The maps, the most dangerous evidence, showed the precise geological features that define the boundary line, the territory line. The government successfully seized the most dangerous element, the scientifically repeatable proof that would stand up in a court of law. The final act of injustice was the installation of military-funded survey teams along the fringes of the territories, posing as geologists. The secret was now complete, professionally guarded and heavily armed. I found the obituary of Senator James Wylie, the powerful politician who spearheaded and personally signed the silence order. A handwritten, confidential note tucked into the Obsidian File painted him not as a statesman, but as the gatekeeper of a national deception. Senator Wylie, publicly lauded for his staunch defense of resource development, was the cold, efficient political engineer of the cover-up. His key, confidential motivation was revealed in a terse private correspondence with a mining executive. The existence of a non-classified, intelligent species on the claimed copper tract would instantly invalidate all current and pending resource leases under the current environmental statutes. The creatures must remain definitively unproven to avoid a total and immediate forfeiture of the territory. This single note confirmed the cover-up was purely, cynically economic, driven by profit. The government's true goal was to protect its financial interests and those of its corporate backers. The silence order was an economic decree disguised as a national security measure. Wylie used his considerable political capital to enforce the substitution headline across the country. The mere existence of the creature was an unacceptable threat to billions in profit. I realized the true, lasting villain was a ruthless, cynical politician protecting the bottom line. The powerful, highly aggressive machine Wylie had built decades ago was still functioning perfectly and aimed directly at me. I needed to circumvent its reach entirely. David was the last surviving true descendant son of Elder Sky Bear, and when I showed him the old, fragile telegram, he didn't blink. He just started quietly whistling the exact melody the creature had used to lure me in the woods. That familiar, haunting lullaby was the first authentic piece of tribal knowledge that broke the century-old conspiracy. I tracked David down to a remote family-owned diner located miles from the nearest town. I presented him with the recovered fragmented telegram. "They are not myth. The warning is real. Stop." He calmly confirmed that the creature's specific sonic signature and mimicry was an inherited, communicated piece of essential tribal knowledge, a sophisticated test to gauge human vulnerability and intelligence. I showed him the Senator Wylie memo, the damning proof of pure economic motive. David confirmed his father had always suspected their true, ultimate motive was the copper and gold, not fear of the creature. David then revealed the government's critical, fatal blind spot. During the forced confiscation, they overlooked a single, seemingly innocuous piece of ceremonial history. He pulled out a thick, beautifully tanned sheet of elk hide. It was a permanent, fire-resistant topographical rendering, showing the ancient stone circles and the precise hidden entrance to the Valley of the Sleepers. He carefully traced the lines with his finger. They thought they had all the maps, but they didn't realize this was the key to their entire conspiracy. "It shows the final, protected border," David explained, his voice low and serious. I was holding the final, undeniable piece of physical evidence, a map to the truth itself. The chase had moved decisively from the dusty, secure archives to the wild, protective mountain. My time to act was critically running out. The precise moment the survivor placed the ancient map in my hand, the lights in the room went out completely. It wasn't a standard power failure. It was the final, terrifying proof that the sophisticated cover-up machine had successfully located and targeted me. The ensuing silence was instantly broken by the clinical click of a door latch being opened. David instantly shoved the precious leather map and the briefcase into my hands. "Go. The back alley. They want that map and the file more than they want you." His voice was low, absolutely devoid of panic, a true warrior's calm. I vaulted the booth in a single motion. Behind me, I heard the crash of the front door being violently kicked open and the terse, emotionless voices of men giving orders. They were the cold, professional operators of Senator Wylie's decades-old machine. I burst out the back door into the cold night air. A black, unmarked sedan idled silently at the end of the alley. Two figures in dark coats were already closing the perimeter, moving with practiced efficiency. They pursued with a relentless, unsettling silence, never shouting, never running, just closing the distance. I was not a person to them. I was an object to be reclaimed and silenced. I turned sharply into an overgrown gap in a hedge. I needed to get off the grid, out of digital surveillance. The hidden valley was the only sanctuary left. The conspiracy had driven me into the terrifying wilderness, forcing me to rely on the formidable, protective presence of the Watchers themselves. I had to reach the ancient, final border. They thought they could bury the truth in a secure basement vault, but they didn't understand the fundamental nature of a true secret. It is a wild seed that must be planted and protected until it is ready to bloom into the light. I drove the final distance, navigating the dark logging roads and overgrown trails based only on David's animal hide map. The map showed the one true path to the territory line, bypassing all the government-installed survey camps. I arrived at a remote, utterly silent clearing as the sun finally dipped below the ridge. Before me stood 3 ancient squat granite formations, the unmistakable stone circles marking the perimeter. This was the silent, solemn entrance to the Valley of the Sleepers. I took the briefcase containing the Obsidian File and the fragile telegram, carefully placing them inside my reinforced pack. I saw the telltale plume of dust rising fast from the valley floor far below, the unmistakable sign of high-speed pursuit closing in. They were moments away. The choice before me was stark and critical. The only way to permanently dismantle the cover-up was to secure the undeniable, living proof within the protection of the valley. I squeezed through the narrow, tight gap between the massive granite markers. The exact moment my boots touched the ground inside the perimeter, the low thrumming instantly intensified into a deep, resonating tone of undeniable acknowledgement. I was inside the hidden valley, and the Watchers knew I was there and under their protection. I deliberately dropped the empty titanium briefcase just outside the stone circle, a silent, defiant offering. The government had come for the document, but I was going to give them the living secret itself. The stone circles are silent now, the echoes of the thrumming fading into the deepest, most protected part of the hidden valley. If you want to continue this perilous journey with Mountain Dave, to expose the secrets the government buried, the secret of the Black Pyramid and the Valley of the Sleepers, hit subscribe and share this story now. And comment what you think about the true, economic reason behind the cover-up. The truth of the Watchers remains protected by the ancient pact, demanding respect and silence from those who listen closely. The wild places still hold their most powerful secrets, and the only question is, are you listening? Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.